welcome to the Pod Like a Pro podcast, where you can gain insights and tips into podcasting so you can do it like the professionals. I'm Liz Clarkson from Pod and Pen Productions, and I'd like to acknowledge the storytelling traditions of the Awabakal people whose lands I'm standing on right now as we record this podcast. Now, would you like to see a direct return on investment for your podcast? Of course you do. Who doesn't? But it's not something that people are too transparent about, and it can be really unclear the best way to go about it. So today I am super chuffed to be welcoming mentor, digital marketing coach, online entrepreneur, author, bookshop owner, and host of the Kate Toon podcast, amongst many others, Kate Toon. Welcome.
Woohoo! Hello, lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful. I'm so happy that you're here. I hope you can't hear my kids who have just, as I pressed record, all jumped on the trampoline that's just outside this door.
Brilliant. Well, this is why having a good microphone is important for podcasting, because we can't hear anything.
Oh, well, that's
I have
good.
a dog next door that isn't having a good time at the moment and just barks almost continually. But because of my good little microphone, you can't
Cuts
hear
it out.
So, yeah.
Blessed.
There we go.
Now, you don't know this, but I actually found you. I found out about you from your podcast, the Hot Copy
yay!
podcast that you were doing with Belinda Weaver all those years ago.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of proof that podcasts work. But you've had 4 podcasts over the time that you've been podcasting. And I know that you sort of probably started in what was a bit of a different era of podcasting. It feels like, you know, pre and post COVID is a different space for it. But what would you say podcasting how has that influenced your business?
Well, it's really odd, actually, because I used to work at an agency called Ogilvy, and really, I don't know when podcasting started, you'd probably know, but it was a long time ago. And we had one guy who worked with us, Mick, who left Ogilvy to start a podcasting business. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was actually...
Mick is now a millionaire.
Yeah, he was really ahead of his time. I mean, I'm thinking that must have been like 2005, 2006. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that would have been the birth.
The inception.
Time, yeah.
But really, I was a late adopter to podcasts in a way. I first started getting into podcasts when my friend Kelly Exeter told me about a podcast called Serial, which is obviously amazing. And I think it was after that Belinda actually approached me to do the Hot Copy podcast. It was her idea, so full credit to Belinda. And we did that for a couple of years. And then obviously I have the SEO podcast, which leads into my SEO side of my business. I did my own copywriting podcast when Hot Copy ended. And now I have the Kate Toon show, which is morphed into various different things based around my books, really. But I will say, and this is a snippet that you can use on social media, podcasting has without doubt been, I would say, the second most powerful part of my funnel. Obviously, I'm going to say SEO is number one because I'm an SEOer. But I think podcasting can be even more powerful than SEO. There, I said it because of the relationship you have with your listener, the intimacy, the trust. You know, when some people have listened to every episode of my recipe podcast, that's nearly 300 hours of me. I mean, God, I can't think of anything worse. And by the end of that, either they love you or they hate you. And likely, if they keep listening, they love you. And there's just no better way to build that authority, expertise, and trust. I really don't think there is. So hugely powerful in my whole business.
Fantastic. Thank you for that plug for podcasts. I do think that, you know, podcasting probably used to be about helping to grow your audience. And I do think now it's more about, you know, if you want super fans, if you want people who just are absolutely there with you thick and thin, then they need to know you. And podcasting, that intimacy of it being right in your earbuds is just
so
awesome.
Powerful. Well, it's all levels of the funnel. It's top of funnel for brand awareness. It's middle of funnel for moving people from, you know, just browsers to purchases. And then it's bottom of funnel for those loyalty and turning them into advocates for you. So it's the whole funnel in one element. But obviously, the downside of podcasting is it's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than posting a meme on Instagram. It's a commitment. And as you know, and you've talked about on the pod previously, many people never get past like the 5th episode because they start to realize, oh, this is much harder than I thought it was going to be.
It absolutely is. And I guess part of the work that we do with people is to try and simplify the process as much as possible. We've just done an episode on editing, and we're talking about the best way to edit is to not. So you just prepare beforehand, and then you don't have to edit, and then everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like because this podcast is a lot for people who are just starting out and learning how to podcast, people might be flippant and saying, well, it's all right for you, Kate Toon. You're funny and you're charismatic and you can talk and I can't do those things. So I wonder, is that something that, have you had to work on that over the time that you've been podcasting?
I mean, obviously, I've always been funny and articulate. I'm joking. No, absolutely. Podcasting that's how I learned how to talk. That's how I learned how to, leaving gaps and not going, I'm sorry about that, everybody, and, putting resonance into your voice and having highs and lows. And, all of that has come through podcasting. Podcasting has made me an infinitely better speaker. If you want to amuse yourself, go back and listen to the early episodes of Hot Copy or Recipe. Belinda and I didn't know what we were doing. She was better than me, but we used to talk over each other. In the podcast episodes of Recipe, I would interview people and I wasn't really listening to what they were saying. So then I just asked the next question. There's awkward pauses, there's coughs, there's snorts. So I've learned it over the time, and also, but I've been, I'm big into personal branding and being who I am. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. And I think a lot of podcasts are vanilla. I think a lot of podcasts are just interview shows where the actual host may as well not be there. It's heroing the guest, not the host who's putting all the work in. And so I've worked on strategies to change that. And now, I'm doing a daily podcast at the moment. And to your point about editing, there is no editing. I do have an editor, but he just adds music at the top of the bottom and maybe balances the sounds a little bit. But there is no cuts. You get what you get. And that means I can bang that out very quickly. If I waffle like I am now. And sometimes I'm succinct, but it is what it is. And that comes with time. I mean, I've been doing this since 2015. So it's a long time.
Yeah, it comes with time. I think there's a skill there of learning how to be articulate and talk and try not to waffle too much. But there's also there is that self-acceptance of just being, well, I am who I am. If I say the wrong word or I and ah a little bit, oh, well.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I mean, look at someone like Joe Rogan, who is not my cup of tea. His podcasts are 72 hours long. He has a cup of tea, goes to the loo, waffles on about some, misogynist, but people love him. Do or die, because he is quintessentially himself.
That's true. Now, I'm going to talk to you about marketing, monetization, sponsorship in particular in just a moment. But before we do that, I thought I would give people a little taste of the Kate Toon show, because you did mention you are doing daily shows at the moment. So, I mean, that's crazy. We'll talk about that. But I did want to play just a little moment. So I picked the episode where you're actually talking about podcasting because, I figured that would be appropriate.
This is embarrassing. Let's go.
If you talk too fast, talk slower. If you tend to go don't do it. It's horrible. Is that horrible? Did you enjoy that in your ears? Try not to smack your mouth. Try not to have lots of water before you start so you're all wet and moist. Ugh. I said, try not to say moist. That's a marker of a successful podcast. Do not say moist. And then, market it the way you would anything else. Get excited about it. Whatever you're excited about, your audience will be excited about. Shout about it. Share it on social media. Ask in groups for ideas for your pod. Get cool people on. Get them to share it with their mates. Get yourself on their podcast. Do a podcast swap. Include it in the footer of every email you send. Have a banner at the top of your website. Make it your thing. Make it your thing.
A little bit of listening back, which is terrible to do, isn't it? Because people hate listening back to themselves.
Oh, I don't mind. I force myself to listen, and that's another part of the self-acceptance, But I think, you can see from that I talk relatively quickly. There's a lot packed into what I've said there. The main thing is to make it your thing. It can't be a side hustle. If you want to be successful on YouTube, you have to make a couple of high-quality videos every week for a year. If you want to be good at podcasting, you have to make it go all in. That's your thing. You can't half-ass these things, I think. And, that's why I chose podcasting as a channel. I didn't choose YouTube. I don't really do much on Instagram or TikTok. Podcasting is one of my main channels, and I love it.
Now, you are doing this daily show at the moment, and I'm sort of presuming that there's a lot of interaction there. How is that going? I wonder what the reason is behind that, which I think I can guess, and how it's going, because it's a lot of work.
What do you reckon? What do you reckon was the reason?
Well, I think that it's probably because there's a huge interaction there because you're asking people to do the questions. And so there is an interaction there. You've got these really short, sharp, snappy episodes. So people are listening to many in a row, which also means that you can get up in the charts because you're going to get the metric numbers up as well. And so
that all sounds very intelligent and like almost like you're a podcast strategist who knows what she's doing about.
Why did you do it? Yes.
The real reason is I needed, I am very much a believer in if you say you're going to do something, you have to be a woman of your word. So I needed something to reinvigorate me this year. I'm coming into the 16th year of my business. And it's, if people find it hard to be motivated at the start, it's hard to be motivated at this point as well, because I've done everything, So I just wanted to set myself a little challenge, like the ice bath challenge or a squat challenge. I'll make a podcast today. The interaction is lazy podcasting because literally I do not have to think of an episode. I do not have to sit for 1 minute. I read a question in the group. I cheat a little. I pop it into Magi and I say, give me 5 things to talk about on this podcast. And obviously AI tools give you very generic points, but they're a framework. So it was more to motivate myself in terms of metrics. I don't look at metrics. I'm not interested in data. If I'm enjoying it, that's good enough for me. And yes, but I have got up in the chart. So I was nowhere in the entrepreneur chart. And I think the other day I was like 24, which is, it's not amazing, but it's better than nowhere. As you said, one thing that's nice is I literally am answering a specific person's question. So that connection that I made the effort to do that for you is special, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very special. And I actually I know I said that metrics might be your reason, but I do love that it's not, because I'm always banging on about you need way better reasons than metrics.
Yes.
To make a podcast.
Keep you motivated. I mean, they're an ego boost and it's nice, but you have to do it because you enjoy doing it and you see the value in the long game. Podcasting is a long game, So some people have been listening to my SEO podcast for 5 or 6 years and now they're buying the course. It's a long game. And one of the reasons it's successful is not because it's the best podcast, but because I stuck around when lots of other podcasts have gone by the wayside. So, yeah.
Now, you did mention there that people listen to the SEO for Success podcast and then eventually buy the course at some stage. And I suppose that's probably the most common return on investment that you see for podcasting is people talk about the services and the products that they provide, and people eventually hopefully take them up on those offers. But I did want to get you on here to talk a little bit about sponsorship, because I do think that is another way. It's the next step, I suppose. When is the right time to look for sponsorship, and is it actually something that's a worthwhile endeavour?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of it more as partnership than sponsorship. So you obviously want to be working with people who are very aligned, I know that's such a marketing term, with your brand, right? But also that aren't competitors. It's weird if you're a bakery podcast and you're advertising another baker, right? So the traditional sponsorship model for a podcast is people buy a pre-roll, a mid-roll, or whatever, 15-second little snippet, and they pay by the number of downloads. There's a per download thing. Now, for most of us, smaller podcasts, we just don't have the volume for that model to work. So I don't sell that model. Instead, what I offer is a partnership package. So you can come on board with me and you will get your pre-roll, but also I'll feature you in my newsletter. I will, so I've got different packages. Basic one would just be a couple of pre-rolls in my newsletter, a couple of social media posts, a post in my Facebook group, and maybe a feature in something else. Maybe I'll do something else. And then it goes up. You can have a full sponsored episode. You can host a webinar to my people. So I collected a little group of goodies, of which the podcast is one. And then I sell that as a lump, right? So I still obviously show stats, and my SEO podcast now is worthy of the download model. I've had 650,000 listens of something over the years, which isn't amazing, but it's good for me. But I still prefer the partnership model, because even just recording a little pre-roll, you've got to get the script, you've got to record it, you've got to go back and forth. So you want to get a decent amount of money for that, and you want it to be a bit of a commitment. So I've been lucky. I've had sponsorship from Xero and Hrefs, which is a big SEO software platform, Yoast, a couple of smaller agencies. We've got a new agency coming on board this month, actually, which is exciting. So they're complementary services, and they want to be associated. They don't just want an ad on a podcast. They want to be associated with my brand. The other thing I would say is that the more niche your podcast is, I feel the more value it has. You know, your podcast
Absolutely.
is about podcasting. So you can approach microphone makers, you can approach the podcast host platforms, you can approach editors, you know, lots of different things. But if you're just a generic marketing one, sometimes the value isn't there. So yeah, niche can be good. You might think it's not good. You might think I need broader appeal. But, you know, people these days, they want micro influencers. They'd rather get 1,000 engaged listeners than 40,000 indifferent listeners. So that was a bit of a babble, but I hope that.
No, I think that totally makes sense. It's so important to really think about what's going to align with you. Are you mainly cold calling when you're thinking about?
No, so mainly I don't approach anybody. They approach me. So again, that's part of your marketing, to have a page on your site where you talk about sponsorship. I have a PDF document with all my packages in it and my stats, which we update. So, and then occasionally on social media, I'll be like, we're looking for sponsors. Is anybody interested? And they'll come, because I'm about income diversity. You know, that's my book. Sponsorship is a nice add-on. It's icing on the cake. It's not my focus. My focus is selling my course, and I don't want to lose focus. And I don't have much time. I don't like to work very much. I'm lazy, right? So I'll put an ad up. I'll get someone in, and then maybe I won't have someone for a couple of months. It's not my main focus, but it's lovely money when it comes in. You know, so I'm sure that if all I was doing was one podcast, one course, I would put more effort into sponsorship. But unfortunately, I have two podcasts, a membership, a course, another course, 2 books, speaking gigs, a bookshop. So therefore, I have to be conscious about where my energy goes.
Absolutely. Now, I have one last big question around sponsorship, and this is a big question, and don't feel you have to answer it personally, but more from a broad sort of professional viewpoint. How does someone work out how much money they should be asking for from potential sponsors?
No, it's a great question, and I love talking about money, so that's absolutely fine. So I think my package is, there is no right figure. There is no right figure. You know, I've seen people who have, you know, 100 listeners boldly asking for sponsorship of like $1,000, $2,000. And it's ridiculous. You know, why would someone bother to spend that money? It's just not worth it. But generally, the people who do that have a strong brand. You know, so the person is really paying to cozy up with the brand, to cozy up with the entrepreneur. You know, they want that relationship. And let's be honest, if you are an entrepreneur and you're going to pay more attention to people who give you money. You know, you've got 400 people in your membership. One of them says, hey, I'll sponsor your podcast. You're never going to forget that one, are you?
No,
Do you
absolutely
know what I mean?
not.
And it's a way, you've got to see that sponsorship isn't just a literal pre-roll on a podcast. It's a way to build a relationship with that person who then might come and speak to your members, who then might speak at your event, who then might mention you on this, you know. So a lot of people are paying for friendship or buddying. That's one thing to remember. So I think, look, my packages, I think the first one starts at about $3,500. So it's not a huge amount. And for that, I think you get, you know, I can't remember. Sorry. They've got names. They've got names. 3. There's always do pricing in 3. So I've got my, you know, baby bear, daddy bear, mummy bear pricing. The mummy bear is expensive. I think it's like 13 grand. It's like a big commitment from me and them. It's like an ongoing 6-month relationship. The middle one's about 5.5. And the lowest one is about 3.5. And you get a couple of pre-rolls, you get a mention in email, you get social media posts, you get mention in my Facebook group, and you get some love, you know. So yeah, that's where I start. And how did I come up with that pricing? I pulled the figure out of my bottom. To a degree, it's about how much effort. So I have to think about the physical hours to record the thing, to negotiate the deal, to talk to the person, to make the graphics. And then I want to make sure that I make about 50% on top of that. You know, so if it's taking me $1.5 to do, I want to make $3,000 so that I get my margin.
I can't believe we've got to this point and we haven't actually mentioned your book, your latest book that's out, which is 6 Figures While You Sleep, which has actually really helped to inform me to create the podcast course that we're running, Pod Like a Pro, which I've just, you know, so there's just so many relationships there as well. And I know that podcast in a way can be a bit of an ad pip, which
it can,
you know, or speaks to the ad pip that you are doing. So it's a wonderful sort of tool if anyone's thinking about creating a podcast in relation to a course or anything like that.
I should explain that ad pip means automated digital passive income product. It's a Toonism. I made it up. But yeah, I talk about funnels towards the end of the book, and I do talk about how podcasting has been major for me. Because I track as people join my course or join my group, how did you hear about me? And most people do say the podcast. Now, I'm everywhere on all platforms, but the podcast is a powerful driver. Because as I said, once you've listened to someone for half an hour, you know who they are. And you know whether you like them or not. It's very hard to pretend on an ongoing podcast because you're going to record it on all different days, when you're good, when you're bad. You're going to make slip-ups, you know, especially with this one that I'm just recording straight, which is just out of my head. You know, it's very personal.
Absolutely. Kate Toon, you're wonderful. I also love being part of your digital marketing collective group as well. So thank you for all you do for small business, and thanks for being on the show today.
Yay, thank you very much.
Now, if you're interested to find out more about launching a podcast in 2025, you can check out my website, podandpen.com.au. Doors to our course, Pod Like a Pro, are opening in February 2025. Yay! Until next time, happy listening.